Alrighty, welcome everyone to my brand new channel. My name is Olivier, and I'm going to be showing you how to model a 3D stealth aircraft, or at least give you the tips using the F-22A as an example. So before we begin modeling, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to collect reference, whether it's creating a board on Pinterest and collecting reference and in a board, or you can just look on your local browser and find some images. Most importantly, you're going to want to find a blueprint for the plane that you're trying to make, or if you want to wing it, feel free. You don't necessarily need a blueprint, but you're going to want to get some inspiration somewhere, somehow. So the blueprint I'll be using is most likely going to be this one. It looks nice, it looks clean, it's high resolution. You'll be able to save this to your file and import it into Blender in a very simple way. And if you're looking for blueprints, there is a database called www.theblueprints.com, and you can find just about any modern aircraft, even other things such as humans, trains, tanks, etc. So let's continue. To begin modeling, you're going to want to open a Blender file, click General, and we're going to delete the unnecessary items for now. Let's delete the light and the camera, and you're going to actually want to keep the cube. In order to set up our scene, I'm going to recommend pressing Shift A to add an object, add a plane, press S, scale to about 100, or you could scale even more, doesn't matter, as long as you switch your viewport shading mode to wireframe. That way, so when we press on our little rotating gizmo over here, we can actually lock on to the negative Y view and have a line that shows up. That'll be a guide for our blueprint placement. So select the plane again, press Shift D, press R, and type in 90 while pressing Y as well to make sure that you lock the rotation on the Y axis, and boom, now you have another guide. We're going to do the same thing, except we're going to rotate it on the Z axis, so Shift D, Z, and then R, oh, Shift D, Z, R, 90 again, and boom, now you have another guide. So you're probably wondering why this matters. Well, the blueprint that I'm using actually has a line that goes through it. So I'm going to go to my downloads. I'm going to go to the F-22 that I have downloaded. Boom, we're going to scale this up a bit. And as you can see, there's a dotted line on this particular example. It's not on all examples, but it is on this one. And what we're going to want to do is, since this is the top view, we're going to press R, Z, 90 degrees. Boom. We're going to rotate it another 90 degrees, but in the negative direction, so that we keep all of our blueprints in kind of a easier to read light. It does not necessarily matter, but if you have writing on yours, you may want to keep it in a positive direction. So this line is obviously not centered, so the first thing we're going to want to do to make this a little easier on us is we're going to drag this to where the red cursor is. We're going to put the lines to match up right about there. And we're going to change the pivot point to the 3D cursor. Now when we rotate, it rotates around the nose as opposed to having to, move it around and rotate it and whatnot. All right, so now we're going to rotate it by pressing R, and boom, that should be completely aligned. And just to double check, just keep rotating. There you go. So now we can scale this up to whatever value we'd like. I personally am going to keep it just like this. That way we can actually just Shift D, press R, and then rotate it 90 degrees. And now we have a side view that we can work with. So this is obviously not the side view. So press G to move it up. You're gonna move it up, move it up, move it up, move it up. And actually, as you can see, one has landing gear and one doesn't. So we're going to move this over here. Press Control M to flip, or RZ 180 degrees. That way it is perfectly aligned. So we're going to align this one more time. Since we align the other one at the base of this nose, that should be pretty aligned. There you go. Alrighty, and we're actually going to use this line on the blueprint as the contour line, which, well, it's called the contour line. And we're going to raise it up a little bit just to make sure it matches. And boom, if you kind of, squinted a little, maybe you could see what I'm trying to get at here. But basically, you're going to want to create the boundary of the plane by using the blueprint itself. And just note that these blueprints are not always 100% to scale. So later on, you may have to scale it up a little bit or rotate it or this or that. Just it should not be a worry of just now. We're just trying to get the basic measurements in. So Shift D, R, Z, 90 degrees, and then negative sign. That should flip it to the negative 90 degrees again. Now what we're going to want to do is align the front. So we're going to find that same contour line right about there. We're going to move it to the center right there. Make sure those are lined up, and you can't really see it too well, but if I select this, it's orange. As you can see, there is about equal space in between the line, and this should almost be 100% in the center. Just going to move it a little. There you go. And now your blueprints are set up. And I know it looks a little goofy, so we're going to space it out. We're going to move this, move that down. And now we do not need these planes, so we're going to delete that. Now we're going to select this cube, and most YouTubers will delete the default cube and then bring in another, but I disagree with that. I think all cubes are sacred, all default cubes. So what we're going to do is we're going to align with the negative y-axis, press tab, A unless it's already selected, press A, rotate 90 degrees, rotate 45 degrees, excuse me. And now what we're going to do is this line itself is actually going to create a bit of a contour. As you can see with most aircraft that are stealth, there is a contour line separating the top of the plane from the bottom of the plane. And instead of having to painstakingly model this line out, you can use the cube as a template to have automatically kind of a sharp crease at the sides there. So what we're going to do is go back into edit mode. We're going to scale this up. Actually, we're going to scale it down. We're going to move it along the y-axis, S. We're going to scale it down. Oh, and change your pivot point to individual origins. We're going to line this up with the slats over here that are where the intakes are. S to scale. And we're going to make sure this matches up. Scale it again. Alrighty, so that matches up there. We're going to check here. This little space right here is going to be beveled. So once we bevel it, it's going to move up on its own. We don't need to worry about that. However, we do need to worry about matching this contour line. So we're going to press this to make it go up. We're going to select this, press G and Z, and we're going to want to make this line match up just for future reference. Then we're going to select this, move this upward, and try to, once again, match it, but do aim for a little bit higher than maybe like a percentage point higher, because this is going to be reduced and we're going to have to modify it later anyways. So now what we can do is select this face. We're going to press S to scale, and we're going to try to continuously at least match the contour lines path almost, but it's not necessarily the most important to be accurate with this part, because this part involves just aligning the contour line. And now is the part where it can get a little tricky. So as you can see, this is not round at all. So in order to make it round, Control B, by selecting these two vertices, Control B, and we're going to drag that out. Now, if you're making the SU-57, just 2 segments is completely fine. However, since we're working on the F-22, we're going to bump it up by using our scroll wheel, and we're going to scroll to about 4 to 5 segments. That should be more than enough, because we are going to use a subdivision modifier, and that is going to definitely sway the way of how we use geometry in Blender. So as you can see, it's not matching up perfectly, and that is totally fine, because I have a suspicion that this side profile is not going to match this front profile. As you can see, the contour line does not match up. This vertex would technically need to be down here. However, it matches our top and it matches our side. So we're going to actually scale this plane, this image. We're going to change that to 3D cursor, scale it in just a little. We're going to move it up and make sure it just matches the line. And you can't see it too well, but once we go into this view, you can. So this is, since this is actually not the bottom, it would have to move over here to really be the bottom. We don't need to worry about filling in this gap right here. That is completely fine, but we do want to make it a little more square. So we're going to select that, drag it down. Select that, drag it down just a little. We're actually going to scale it to the right. That way we do match the angle it's being scaled at. And now what we're going to want to do is do the same to the top. But as you can see, something that I see a lot is when you're scaling the bevel, when you're adding all the segments, you do need to have the lines be tangential to the cockpit. That way you can actually just bevel it and not have to worry about scaling it, therefore saving you a lot of time in the process and making it much easier to actually get the final product and much more efficiently. So now we have the general shape, but as you can see, there is a little divot here, right around here, that we cannot necessarily create on both sides evenly or equally without a mirror modifier. So what you're going to want to do is press Control R, and you're going to see a yellow line pop up around the center. Use your left mouse click to double confirm it, and we're going to select the entire middle line. Press H to hide. Select one of the vertices on the left. Control L to select all of them. Press X to delete vertices, and press Alt H to hide. And now you have half of the nose. Pretty much. So go to the modifier properties tab on the cube, add modifier. We're going to search mirror modifier, and there you go. Now everything you do on this side is going to be done on that side. So now what we can do is we can edit this by adding a loop cut. By the way, pressing Control R, selecting, we're going to move this upward. And once again, since we're using a subdivision modifier, we're going to want to use a lot of tangential lines. So you can bring this down just a smidge, bring this up and to the right. There we go. Perfect. Now you can see we're kind of having a low poly block out of the overall goal of what we're trying to do. In addition, as you can see, this line has to match up perfectly with this corners. We're going to move that by pressing G and Y and scrolling up. And as you can see, it does not match here. So we got to select one. So I'm thinking we should move this side profile along the y-axis and match it up like that. That way we can preserve the top view, and all we have to do is just modify this little. So select those, drag it down. We're going to select this, drag it up, select that, move along the y-axis, and boom. Now we're a little closer to completion of just the nose. And do be reminded, this is just a tutorial on how to set up your scene and how to start learning some of the tips that you're going to take across the entire modeling of the plane, because every single thing that you do when setting up the nose, this is applied to every single part of the rest of the plane, and I'll go over those in my next upcoming tutorials. I'm working on a series trying to get this done, but please be patient. It will take some time. I'm just trying to test the waters and see if this style of tutorials work. So continuing on, we're going to Control R and add a loop cut in between the beveled lines and the contour line. And we're going to actually just move this down just a smidge so that it matches this original line. We're going to select all of these. Now, what we can do is when we scale this, you're actually going to see kind of, oh, actually, we're already on the pivot point around the cursor. So just select this top so that it matches S, X, and just scale a little bit. That way it matches the shape of the canopy. And you can just adjust as needed. It's a very finicky process, I'll be completely honest with you, but once you get the hang of it, it starts to get a little easier and a little less mind-numbing. So the next step is we're just going to finish the nose. We're just going to continue this shape. We're going to move it down. Let's try to keep the contour line matching because that is going to be the center. So we can actually change this back to individual origins, and we're just going to focus on the z-axis. We'll worry about the x-axis and how that's shaping. So we're going to press S, Z, try to match it up. S, Z again, move it up, tweak it as much as you need to. Select this contour line and the line above it. Move that up a little bit so that it's a little more cohesive. We're going to do the same thing. Just move it another value. Shift, just press S, move that down a bit. Shift C again. Boom. Select that contour line, drag it down. We're just trying to have a consistent line that we can always kind of go back to for reference. And as you can see, it looks very goofy from this point of view. So we just got to keep trusting the process. Oh, and by the way, in order to find the X-ray view, just press Alt-Z. That way you can either get a more fleshed out view or press Alt-Z to select things that sometimes you can't select all in one fell swoop. So we're going to do that again. Continue this process. In fact, let's actually just take it all the way to the end here. And as you can see, we're having that same issue as before with the cockpit. I'm going to line that up a bit. And the mirror modifier actually does have a point where once you move the vertice a bit, it'll automatically merge the vertice with its mirrored counterpart, which is pretty handy. And might as well, since we're here, select this. We're going to press S, X. Oh, change your view back to 3D cursor or pivot point. S, X. We're going to scale that to the side there. Do the same thing. S, X. Boom. Now we're matching up pretty much almost entirely. Just a couple changes here and there. And now we kind of have a weird looking front of the plane. So we're just going to adjust this, look at your reference. Obviously, this does not look like an F-22. At least the nose does not. So we're going to raise this up a bit. Raise this up. Let's change this back to that view. Add some more loop cuts to make this rounder. Shift C to bring that up. Alt C to see through. Matching that with the lines. Perfect. All right. Now what we can do is just double check. Add another loop cut there. Bring that down. Now you do not want to add so many loop cuts because once you do and once we apply that modifier, you're going to find yourself with a really slow, really difficult, really long process of cleaning up your mistakes or just waiting forever for your uh, materials to render simply because Blender is trying to calculate all this geometry times 24 essentially. So it will chew up your RAM quite quickly. And let's just continue tweaking as much as we need to, making sure that we're not having flat lines because when you have flat lines and that gets subdivided, it's not going to make it curvy. It's just going to make it flat with the slightest bit of curve, which is suboptimal when you're trying to create very smooth, very aesthetic aircraft. So what you can do is right click, shade auto smooth. That way you can get a better idea. And as you can see, this is kind of the silhouette we want. So since this is a subdivision tutorial, press tab, change your select mode to edge select, press alt and then click with your left mouse button on any line, and this works for anything mostly, and you can select just about any line. So we're going to select our contour lines, press shift E, drag out, and that's going to create a crease. This will be useful later on. And we're just going to do the same for all of these other corners. Boom, boom, perfect. Now it's nice and sharp. Now we're going to go to our modifier tab, press search, subdivision, and there you go. Now you have a bit of a smoother thing. And you're going to obviously see that this is not meant for low poly because you are going to be subdividing this shape until it is completely smooth. So I would recommend one if you want to keep things nice and simple, but I always recommend two if you want more realistic models. And now all we have to do is just tweak, and we can actually delete some of these lines. We can definitely test out different views, different amount of loop cuts, etc. So by the way, press G twice to slide across a view. And we're actually going to move this back up and match it up with the blueprint. We're going to move this down and just tweak and as much as you need to. If you want to add more loop cuts, feel completely free. Just know there is issues with optimization and you're going to want to have clean geometry most of the time. So we can move that down, add another loop cut, bring that around there, drag this down, and now it is much closer to the shape of the cockpit. Drag this down or press S and Z to scale. Oh, change that back to individual origins, S and Z to scale, drag it down. See the same here. Very, very minor changes, but minor changes, minor tweaks, they all make a difference. This up. There you go. And we have some space here that needs to be matched up. All right. As you can see, we're starting to get that shape way more fleshed out. And because I'm a fan of the cooler version of the F-22. We're actually going to select this right here, and we're going to change this back to 3D cursor just in case, and you're selecting the edge line, by the way. Select at cursor after pressing M, and boom. Now you have a point. Let's make that, go back to vertex selection. Let's move that up a little bit. And you're going to get an artifact here, and this comes with subdivision modifiers, so you're going to select this edge right here, and you can do Shift E as well, sharpen that, and boom, now you have a sharp point. And it looks a little bit closer to the F-22, and we're going to go back to our reference here, and as you can see, this shape is a little bit more concave or convex. It's just a little rounder in this area and a little flatter in this area. So we're just going to make sure our geometry is looking rather fine. Let's move this up. Maybe scale it on the X again. Move it down. Now it matches a little better. And we're going to try to use this shape, actually, this radome, which is also not to scale, funny enough. So we're going to select the blueprint again, move this down, maybe scale up a little bit up, scale up again, just to see if we're getting the right proportions here, which I'm going to be completely honest with you, this blueprint is a little scuffed. So honestly, that just comes down to each of the blueprints that you find. And let's see, we're going to want to make this completely round. So we're going to move this up. And that looks a little bit rounder, in my opinion. But if you do look at the front of the F-22, you do have a pretty round, pretty consistently. Actually, this matches just fine. In continuation, if you check this out right over here, let's see, let's check our side profile. This can be moved out. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but you can match it the best you can. Let's see. And other than that, there's not really much else to do, but now you know how to set up your scene. Don't forget to be saving your progress as you go by pressing Control S. Definitely after every step, every change you make, Control S is the way to go. And you're gonna save it in a file over here. Go to your blends or go to a new folder. Just save. Save as F22, etc. Any details that are important to you, just go for it and have a wonderful rest of your day. Now, this is just the first tutorial of many, so do expect more to come soon. Have a great day. Thank you.